I would like to introduce our presenters. We have Keith Power, who is an educator developer at CITL, and Sana Jamil, who is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Education at Memorial University. So thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to share my screen here and get us started. My name is Keith Power, and I am an education developer with CITL, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today and to share a really interesting project that we're working on as part of a national network. So just give me one moment and I'll get the presentation up. So today's presentation is about the Fusion project, and the title of our presentation today is The Fusion Impact, Undergraduate Students' Perspectives on a Co-curricular Skills Enhancement Course. So to begin, I'm going to just mention a little bit about the Fusion Network and what is the Fusion Network and who we are and what we do. So the Fusion Network actually stands for Future Skills Innovation Network, which is a national network of Canadian universities focused on exploring innovative approaches to skills development for the future economy. So Fusion is funded by the Future Skills Center, which is housed out of Ryerson University. And FSC, which is the Future Skills Center, is dedicated to helping Canadians gain the skills they need to thrive in a changing world economy. So the Fusion Network consists of 6 universities. And so we have Concordia, Simon Fraser, us, Memorial, the University of Calgary, University of Saskatchewan, and Carleton University. So these 6 universities came together. And one thing that they're trying to do is look at how to develop the skills of students at universities. And one of the projects, the very first project that we started, was a skills development curriculum. So the curriculum was developed in collaboration throughout the network, and it accumulated into a 10-hour online curriculum to enhance student skill development in 3 critical 21st century skill domains. So those 3 skills are communication, so looking at verbal and written communication skills, problem solving, and metacognition. The choice for these 3 skills were based on repeated prioritization in surveys of employers and looking at their centrality to the next generation of employment opportunities for university graduates. So it has been identified that students are graduating and employers were talking about the need for these particular skills. So we decided that we were going to look at these 3 skills and try and enhance them. So just to give you an idea, metacognition. So we were looking at ways to identify and articulate personal strengths and needs in learning and processing information. So students have to be able to take in the information. They have to make a plan, evaluate that plan, and adapt as they're moving through. And then we also wanted to focus on communication. And so we were looking at helping them identify effective versus ineffective communication strategies, and then also helping them to identify some of their personal strengths in communication and areas that they could improve upon. And then we are also looking at problem solving. And this is looking at, the different types of problems that we face in our daily lives, and then looking at strategies that we can apply to solve those problems and, develop solutions to the problems that we face in our daily lives when we're working, or whether it just be, through school or some kind of employment opportunity. So the curriculum was actually designed to be wrapped around an experiential learning activity. So that could be anything from, being in a co-op placement to doing a work placement, or it could be just, some kind of experiential opportunity that's part of a course that a student is taking in or currently enrolled in. So the curriculum consists of multiple videos, text instruction, guided self-assessments, exercises, reflections, and case studies, and other activities that help students look at those 3 skills and then apply the 3 skills to some kind of a complex problem that they have to identify in their experiential learning environment. So just to give you another little bit of an example here. So the curriculum is broken down into 3 distinct parts. The first part is called the explore phase. And this is where the students are introduced to these 3 critical skills. And the curriculum is designed so that the students interact with the explore modules before they actually engage in some kind of experiential learning opportunity. So they're going to learn about communication, metacognition, and problem solving. And then they spend a little bit of time thinking about a complex problem that they need to address. So typically that would be something in their work experience or their experiential learning experience. So they're taught how to identify a complex problem, and then they identify that, and then they move on to the apply section. And during the apply, this is while they're actually engaged in their, learning experience or their work experience. They work through a model to identify that, to solve that problem and work through it and to come up with a solution. And then towards the end of their work experience, they go through the last section of the curriculum. And this is where they reflect upon, the work that they've done and how they've solved the problem. And then they start to think about future goals and how they can use the skills that they've learned in the future. So today I just have a short video to share with you. This is part of the skills curriculum that we've developed, and it's part of the introductory section. So it outlines a little bit about the skills and what students will see and do. And the videos are representative of the types of videos that they would actually engage with as they move through the curriculum. So,
as you complete this curriculum, you will develop skills in 3 key areas: metacognition, communication, and problem solving. Why are these skills important? Metacognition, communication, and problem solving are all essential skills for 21st century citizens and professionals. They greatly help with transitions from university life to work life. These are the type of skills that are hard to automate, but are necessary for you to thrive and play a key role in the workplace, as well as in other experiences in modern life. Metacognition. Metacognition can be defined as thinking about your own thinking, and is about being aware of how you learn and how you select and use different strategies to help you learn. More precisely, it's the ability of the mind to plan, monitor, and assess its own learning and performance. The main benefit of using metacognition is to help you become an independent learner, which is key to succeeding and achieving your goals. The metacognition module will provide you with practical strategies to assess your upcoming work experience and set personal and professional goals for your experience. It will also help you develop high-level metacognitive skills that will become a natural part of your life. Communication. Communication is the ability to construct and convey a message through an appropriate medium. Good communication skills enhance your ability to think critically and collaborate with others. When you communicate effectively, you become a better team player and contribute to a positive work or study culture. The communication module will help you develop skills which you will then be able to use in your work life, as well as your academic and personal life. Problem solving. Problem solving, and especially complex problem solving, is the ability to connect various analytical strategies to come up with creative solutions to manage difficult situations. Good problem solving skills empower your ability to learn, think critically, collaborate, act, reflect, and adapt to diverse contexts. Being a good problem solver is a skill set all employers value. In the problem solving module, you will learn to apply a problem-solving process and strategies to help you plan and implement effective and impactful solutions. How are these skills connected? Each of the 3 skills help you understand and adapt to your context and situation. These skills also help you reflect on what you have learned and how you have used your skills so far, which leads you to use them more purposefully and develop them further for application in the future. While metacognition, problem solving, and communication are distinct skills, you are very likely to encounter situations that call for you to use some or all of these skills at the same time. Communication skills help you with the ability to adapt to context and audience. Metacognition skills help you with self-awareness and questions. Problem-solving skills help you with analyzing issues and considering solutions. Communication and metacognition skills together help you with responding to circumstances and emotions. Metacognition and problem-solving skills together help you track what is happening and think critically about it. Problem-solving and communication skills together help you collaborate with others to address common challenges. These skills are usually interconnected and are most effective when applied together to help you develop as a 21st century professional. As you complete this curriculum, you will develop skills in.
Perfect. I hope you enjoyed the video. So that gives a fairly good outline of what the course is designed to achieve and how it's laid out. Now I'd like to move on a little bit about Memorial's Fall 2021 implementation. So this was the first time the course was implemented at our university, and actually it was also implemented at 4 of our other partner universities at the same time. But today I'm really just focusing on Memorial's implementation. I may refer a little bit to the other implementations during this presentation or later in the Q&A session. But again, we are just today focusing on Memorial's implementation. So at Memorial, we wrapped the curriculum around the Undergraduate Career Experience Program, which is referred to as MUCEP here, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. And it was used in the Faculty of Science and the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. And the students that engaged with the curriculum were enrolled in research-based learning experiences. So the MUCEP placements that they had were research positions, and they were working under different supervisors in those faculties. And the supervisors had the option of opting in or out of the Fusion pilot project. So it was their choice whether they wanted their students to actually be a part of that. Most of the supervisors did opt in. We had some that opted out, you know, due to the times that we find ourselves in, you know, with COVID. They didn't have the work that they could, you know, get their students to complete. So we did come across a couple of challenges that way. However, as I mentioned, many of the students or the supervisors opted to have their students participate. So the students completed either 40 or 80-hour MUCEP placements. And as part of the curriculum, the pilot, we added the 10 hours of paid time to those placements. So we estimated that it would take approximately 10 hours for the students to complete the curriculum. And so those placements became 50 or 90-hour placements. And as I mentioned, the students were paid at the MUCEP hourly rate to complete the course. So once the students were hired, the supervisors notified us that the student had been hired, and then they were enrolled in the course and provided with written instructions on their roles and responsibilities via email. So an email was sent out to each student saying, you know, you've been enrolled in the course, and there was instructions on how they should actually approach the course and complete the course. So we had 98 students that actually were enrolled in the course. Of those 98, 81 students started the course. So that means they completed some part of the course. 70 students completed the course, so they actually finished all of the modules and went through to the end. So we're looking at about a 71% completion rate. Of the 81 students that started, 77 students had consented to participate in the program evaluation. So a little bit of a breakdown of who was participating. About 66% of the students were female or identified as female. We had about 31 that identified as male, and we had one student who identified as non-binary, and one student decided not to disclose. We also had just 2 students who identified themselves as being indigenous. We also had about 14% who identified as being racialized, and 8 students who identified as being first-generation students, and 6 students who identified as living with a disability. We also had 2 students who identified as being first-year students, and 6 as a second-year student. We had the higher percentages were 3rd and 4th-year students. So you can see almost 50% and then 40% identify as being 3rd or 4th-year students. One student did not disclose. So as we started to evaluate this implementation, we generated some questions to think about, what do we want to know about this? And of course, we wanted to know how this curriculum was impacting student learning and skill development. We also wanted to understand a little bit about how the course was being facilitated. As I mentioned, it was being facilitated across 5 different campuses. And at each campus, we facilitated it in a different environment and in a different way, using different programs. So we used MUCEP here at Memorial University, but at another university, they integrated as part of a co-op program. At another university, it was actually integrated into some of the students' credit courses. So faculty gave up a little bit of their time so that this curriculum could be integrated into their course, and the students completed it for credit. And then we also wanted to understand the barriers and challenges that students face while they were completing it. As this was a pilot, we're looking at improving the product and the learner experience. And then the last one is, what were the key lessons we learned from this pilot's implementation? So to gain an understanding of that, we conducted student interviews, and I also had a lot of information that I was able to analyze through our learning management system. So the course was embedded into Brightspace, and Brightspace tracks, when the students log in, how much time they spend on certain modules. It logs during the course, they actually had to submit 3 different small assignments. And it logs when they completed those assignments. So those 3 assignments align with the 3 stages of the curriculum. So they explore, apply, and reflect. So after they did the explore, they were required to submit a small assignment. And then I had access to when they did this. For the interviewed information, we conducted 13 semi-structured student interviews. So both Sana and I engaged in those interviews. As one person asked questions, the other took notes. And just a couple of example questions we asked is, how did the Fusion curriculum integrate with your work experience? What could have enhanced the quality of the user experience? And how did the curriculum impact the growth of your skills? So these are just a couple of examples. Just to give you an idea, each of the interviews lasted approximately 20 to 25 minutes. And all of the students that participated consented to this. And but every student was actually invited to participate, and only 13 students decided that they wanted to participate in the interviews. So I'm going to move on now to some of our key findings, and Sana's going to take over from here, and she's going to go through the findings with you and outline the key things that emerged from those interviews. After we go through the findings, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my own personal observations as the course facilitator and some of the things that I noticed and how they align with the information that was provided with the students. So I'm going to pass it over to you now, Sana, if you'd like to go ahead, and we'll move on from here.
All right, thanks. So as mentioned, the student perspectives come from the 13 interviews conducted with students after they completed the Fusion curriculum. So their perspective resulted in these main things, that is learning and skill development, skill transfer, course facilitation, challenges and barriers, and student feedback and recommendations. Now, I'll note here that 12 of the 13 students that we included as part of the evaluation reported positive experience. Many students said they enjoyed the course, and more importantly, actually, they reported that they learned a lot from the course. So we'll go over the white code. So learning and feeling. Personal reflection is seen as a sub-theme where students' comments relate to their overall experience of the course. Here are two quotes from two different students where they mention that they found fusion curriculum to be very eye-opening, and another student referred of the skills learned in the problem-solving module as their biggest takeaway. I'll just read one of the quotes so it's accessible for everyone. The biggest thing that I took away from the course was probably for me, the problem-solving skills. And like I said, taking a step back and working through things step by step. So in this case, it was very helpful. Next, the sub-theme focused on the importance of effective feedback. Here are some examples that talk about the importance of feedback from supervisors and other students. In the second case, in the second quote here, it's the graduate students. So the first student talked about effective feedback. It was like how effective the feedback was for her from her supervisor to reach out and ask her supervisor to give feedback. She says that, I guess before I had taken the course, I wasn't as aware about how effective it was to get feedback from my supervisor. So I've learned that it's pretty important, and I have found it helped me approach problems better and solve them more efficiently. The second quote is from the student who was working in the lab and assisting graduate students. And she says that getting feedback from graduate students helped her learn better and become more efficiently. The key thing here was to ask questions and reach out for assistance when needed. Next, in general, students realize the importance of being organized in their work. Here is an example of a student who was trying to develop a strategy to solve a problem. She learned from the curriculum how to kind of write down all the possible reasons for the issue and then kind of cross those off as you go. And then instead of just looking without really thinking, if that makes sense, she says, like I found I was more organized in the way of approaching issues after I learned that. Again, the key takeaway was to look at the problem from multiple perspectives and then analyze the issue and then see what is the best way to solve problem. The next main theme was skill transfer. Here are a few examples of students who mentioned that curriculum was not only beneficial to their MUCEP work experience, but also to school in general. Here the first quote says, so far, I focused on how it will be beneficial to work experience, but I think it's just beneficial to school in general. The second example actually takes it even further, stating that those are the skills that could help in school, but also in life in general. Next, we look at the other sub-theme, which was personal life. This over here, it looked like the skills are learned can be also applied not only in your academics, but also life outside academics. Here is an example of a student who applied communication and problem-solving skills that she learned in the modules. She could relate it to her job as a server, where all customers are different. And in communication modules, she learned about how knowing about your audience is really important. She says, I also applied it to my other job as a server. So I did apply my communication skills, the communication module to that. Also, I learned in the problem-solving module that there were different problem-solving methods that you could use to approach a problem. And then she started using that at the restaurant. So she noticed that she was able to look at issues and then solve those issues in an efficient manner by applying different methods of problem solving. Next, we look at the third theme, which focused on course facilitation. And self-directedness actually emerged as a sub-theme. Many students found that self-directed learning approach of the course to be more convenient. And here are some quotes that speak to this. So in terms of it being self-directed, I think that was definitely the best. Another student, for instance, says in the last quote that at some point, you're going to be in a job. You have to be able to learn on your own and develop. And, you know, work in an independent learning setting. Now, in the next slide, there were also some students who liked the self-directed approach to learning, but also preferred a bit more facilitation and interaction. For example, here a student says that it was good in the sense that we did it on our own time, which is nice. But on the other hand, it would also have been nice to have a little bit more interaction with you, that is the course instructor, and work through it with other people together. Similarly, in the next slide, here are students who preferred more discussion, like offering an opportunity for students to come together and have sort of a discussion on some of the issues that they have had or worked through. Those would have been beneficial. Another student actually talked about having question and answer sessions every now and then. On the next slide, now this is a very long quote coming, but actually it provides several ideas for making the course more interactive, like having office hours, using online rooms, or WebEx for meeting face-to-face. So he says that as face-to-face, people might be a bit more inclined to ask questions that they might not necessarily send an email for. Next. Now, for the next theme here, there were very limited challenges actually and barriers that were reported. There were some technical glitches that were reported in the LMS system, and which was good to know because these have been resolved since then. Now, for some, actually, time was seen as a challenge. As an example, they say 10 hours, I think, is a lot of time to commit. Another student says, I would have been more aware and probably time manage a bit better if I had strict deadlines to follow. Next. So as a personal challenge, only one student talked about struggling mentally. He says a lot of people have been struggling mentally. I feel like that's also, you know, a roadblock into completing things. So that's another thing to kind of take into account. And I feel like for me, that was probably another thing that I guess slowed the process of me completing the Fusion program. Next, we look at student feedback and recommendations. So there were several students who indicated that the Fusion course would and will be beneficial in the early years of academic studies. For example, over here, the student says in the first quote, I wish this was done earlier. I'm in my third year now. This would have been helpful in my previous years to use these skills. Another student says, I don't think that would be more beneficial to take towards the beginning of an undergrad, maybe. Maybe first, the second year, because these are skills that would carry over into your later years. Next. So in general, we try to be as inclusive as possible. Example, closed captioning was available for all of our videos. However, we do realize that there are areas where we can improve. And here is an example of a recommendation. The student says that whenever I'm reading for a really long time, I find that I started to disconnect a little bit. So being able to have a different means of getting that information, and she's referring to text-to-speech software, it's going to be helpful for someone like me. Now, out of 13, 3 students who were interviewed mentioned that text-to-speech software would be beneficial moving forward. And just to add here that none of those 3 students mentioned who mentioned this identified to have a disability. But this feedback was great to have, as it will align well with the principles of universal design of learning and accessibility. So with this, now I'll pass back to Keith.
And thank you, Sana. I want to move on by talking a little bit about the facilitation of the course and take a step back so people are aware of some of the students' comments that were made. I probably should have did this a little bit earlier, but as I mentioned, the instructions for the course were sent out via email, and the students were notified that they could contact me at any time if they had questions or concerns or if they needed any assistance. But there was very little contact between myself and the students. The course is designed in a way that they can go into the curriculum in the LMS and they can complete it independently. So I was just there more as a troubleshooter or to help them out if they needed any questions. And there weren't a lot of communications between myself and the students. Not many had reached out. A couple did. If they as Sana had mentioned, there was a few technical glitches within the LMS. So for example, the LMS wasn't tracking that they completed a certain module. A few students had that issue. And they were concerned that I wouldn't know that they had completed the course, for example. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the importance of facilitation. I purposely took a little bit of a hands-off approach as we are trying to develop independent learners. But one of the things that actually came out is that, students want facilitation. A large percentage of them mentioned the importance of having that human-to-human contact, or just even meeting for coffee breaks, or just having some kind of a session to ask questions. And I thought that was really important to learn. Also, going through my own observations, I realized the importance of facilitation. So, for example, I had to send out multiple communications to students and asking them, why they haven't progressed through the course, or, were they having difficulties progressing because I noticed they weren't completing the various modules. And I also noticed that many of them missed vital information through the emails that I was sending out. So when I sent out the instructions, after I communicated with them, they would say, oh, I didn't see that information, or I wasn't aware of that. So just through email communications itself, a lot of the students weren't getting the information. And one of the students that we actually interviewed mentioned, she was like, I get so many emails, I scan them, I don't read them. And she said, I know that's not good, but that's the reality. So I probably missed a lot of the information you sent out. So I think having that face-to-face opportunity, or having a time to meet with students and to share vital information, is also important. And as I gathered data through the learning management system, I was tracking the students and seeing how they were progressing. And I did notice that many of the students were struggling to stay on track. I can't be 100% specific about times. And the reason is because as the students were hired, they were then enrolled in the course. So they weren't all enrolled at the same time. So all through the month of October, they were being enrolled in the course. So some had started a little bit earlier, some a little bit later, but they were expected to pass in their first assignment before they completed 10 hours of their MUCEP work. And so I would suspect for many of the students, that would have been in early or in October or early November. So I was going through, and then as you can see here at the bottom, only 35 students had submitted their first assignments prior to the month of December. So while I wasn't aware of how many MUCEP hours they had actually completed, I would assume if you were doing 40 or 80-hour placements, that by December you would have completed at least 10 hours of your work, if not much more. The same with looking at how many students had completed at least 2 hours of the Fusion curriculum by November 16th. If you remember, we estimated that the Explore module would take about 4 hours, and the students actually confirmed all this. They said, yes, the course took us about 10 hours, and we were very accurate in how long it would take. However, only 30 students had completed more than 2 hours of the Fusion curriculum by November 16th. So without that person-to-person contact, without having a session to encourage students or to meet with them, to answer questions, I think a lot of the students put this course aside until the end. So they weren't actually going through and completing it the way it was fully designed to be completed. So that also talks to the importance of facilitation and having somebody there to work with the students. The students also talked, there were no deadlines, as I mentioned, because students were coming in at different times. And some of the students did talk about the importance that it would be, if they had some deadlines, it would help them. Other students talked about that they really appreciated that they did not have deadlines to complete this course, because, if they had deadlines, it would put a lot more stress and pressure on them. So I just wanted to share my observations and how they relate to what the students were saying. So a lot of the students said, we want to be independent. It's important to be independent. But we also have to understand that a part of independence is knowing when to ask for help or when to reach out and get assistance. So having that facilitator there does not mean that you're not teaching students to be independent. You're there to help them learn how to be independent. And that, I think, is a key takeaway from this course. They're probably not independent learners at this stage. We're there to help them become independent learners. So the conclusions that we come away with was that, it was overwhelmingly reported that the students had positive learning experiences. 12 of the 13 students really said that they enjoyed the course and learned from the course. And they appreciated the new skills that they learned and their value. I think one of the most important takeaways was actually that the students were able to take these skills and transfer them to the other aspects of their lives. And that's really what learning is about, is being able to learn in one environment and then use those skills in multiple environments. Students, they were a little bit mixed on whether they wanted more facilitation or not. However, I think my observations, along with, some of the things that the students were saying, says that, facilitation is the key to good learning. It helps students to learn. It provides them with support. They want that interaction. And I think the last thing that we will take away from this is that the importance of this skill development in the early stages of students' academic careers is highly recommended. They could learn these skills. If they learn these skills early, they can use them throughout their academics. And I think that would be something that would benefit a lot of students. I'm going to turn it over now to a questions and comments section. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here for a second. Perfect. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free. You can write them in the chat. You can unmute yourself, ask away, and I'm happy to have a discussion with you and provide any information that I can. Jennifer, you have a question.
Hi, Keith. That was awesome. And both of you, it was a great presentation. I've been very curious about this particular research, as you know, Keith. And I'm curious about a couple of things. One would be the next steps with regards to the research from across the country. I know that this was curriculum that was applied in multiple experiential settings. So I'm curious, you Memorial focused on on-campus employment. I'm just wondering about the findings from the other experiences at the other institutions, and to see, I'm thinking that this curriculum may have a different type of impact in different situations. So what I want to see what it really worked well with, and then I guess those that didn't come out with the same outcomes, but the content is excellent, and then how can we use it to its greatest ability, basically.
Perfect. Thanks, Jennifer. The next steps forward are looking at ways of implementing this curriculum in multiple, or having it available for multiple departments or organizations within our universities and institutions. So when we're looking at the evaluation, as I mentioned, this was just MUN's evaluation, and my colleagues are in the process of evaluating their own implementation right now. I know our Carleton colleagues, they actually had a little conference presentation yesterday. And unfortunately, I was in this conference, so I couldn't attend that session. So I'm really interested to hear those findings and get the feedback from there. So one of our next steps as well is to look at this as possibly a multiple case study, and then to do some comparison. How did it work in the different environments? Which environments did it work best? And as I had also mentioned, for example, Carleton University, they had much more facilitation than us. They had drop-in sessions for students on a regular basis. They also developed 3 different sessions where students could come in and learn a little bit more about skills. These were optional sessions. They weren't mandatory, and they weren't compensated for any of those sessions. But it was there and made available to the students, and many students did avail of those opportunities. So that's something that we're learning. Students do want this facilitation. If we offer it, they are going to come. Some of them will come, some will not. But I think it's really important to learn from the other universities, and that's why the next stage is to start to look at us across a network, and we're hopefully going to be doing some research and sharing that through conferences and different papers and reports, so that we do know how it does work best.
Thank you. That's great. That consortium, it's just great to be part of that national consortium where we're all learning together. And I look forward to how we can use the resources that have been developed, throughout Memorial. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I see a question there from Gavin. Gavin, if I was teaching a first-year course, could I get access to the modules? Absolutely. The modules are here as part of our network for our universities. However, one of the goals is to share what we develop, and to share not just what we develop, but also our evaluation, our results, what we're learning about this program. And eventually we would like to open up the opportunity to share with other institutions across Canada. So this is a pan-Canadian opportunity. As we get funding from FSC, which is working across Canada on developing skills for Canadians, we are a part of that. So we are open to sharing it with instructors that would like to implement. As I mentioned, it was embedded into 2 different courses at 2 different universities as part of our network. So Carleton did embed it into a course, and so did the University of Saskatchewan. So we're waiting to get back the results from that as well, or the findings. So I think that's going to be exciting to learn about that as well. So I'm just reading another question here in the chat. So Andrea, yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I think students really do appreciate facilitation, and I'd like to reiterate, yeah, we're trying to develop independent learners, but that doesn't mean that, again, that facilitation isn't part of developing independent learners. We often think independence means doing something by yourself, but if we teach students, as you engage in stuff that, an activity by yourself, we often do need assistance. We need some guidance, or we just need somebody to have, to use as a sounding board. And teaching students, and I think if we go back to the feedback quotes of the students and how they talked about the feedback that they were getting. The important part there was certainly that the students learned to ask for feedback. So that they weren't just talking about the importance of feedback. They learned that, hey, I can go ahead and ask for help and I can ask for feedback, and that's going to help me be a better student or a better learner. And one student actually talked about how that, getting that feedback actually improved their grades. They felt that it had a significant impact on their grades. So yeah, that was something that, students do need facilitation. They need to be guided. And, they need to have somebody there that's going to support them in a positive way. So Aaron, you asked a great question, and that is going to be something that needs to be discussed. I would be delighted and really excited if supervisor said, I have this 80-hour placement and I would like to use 10 hours of that for my students to complete this curriculum. If they were willing to do that and they saw the value of this for the student learning, one of the key things about our MUCEP program, it is to facilitate student development. The goal is for students to develop skills. And I look at it as any other position and job. If I go to a conference and I'm learning, or if I do a course, and that's part of my job, is to engage in learning and professional development. And I do get compensated for that time. So I would like to see it, and that's just my own personal opinion right now. I think it's valuable and worthwhile to do that, and to allocate some of those hours towards skill development, because if the students are having an impactful experience, then that is what we want. That's the goal of having them engage in these experiential learning opportunities. So again, that is my opinion, but I need to have those discussions with several other people, and then we'll decide from there. Jennifer, you have a comment.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Aaron's question there. So since 2005, we've intentionally tried to embed reflection into the MUCEP program for the very purpose of increasing students' awareness of the skills that they're gaining from these experiences, working with fabulous faculty and staff. So we have always encouraged that was included in the students' hours. So the discussion at the beginning, the reflection at the end, conversations along the way, that they would just be part of the students' hours. This program was a little bit different because it had specific curriculum that was designed and would take 10 hours. I don't know if it's feasible to if we were to add that in and make the positions longer, or include them in the 80 or 40 hours, it would impact the amount of time the student would have to work. So lots of things to talk about, but I will tell you we are starting a pilot in September with MUCEP to enhance that reflection further, using a little bit of a different approach, but also now what's helpful for me is seeing this curriculum and how we can use this curriculum as an add-on to what we are planning as well. So I just wanted to make those comments because we know a lot of faculty and staff are doing great reflection with their students now, and students are walking away with greater recognition and the ability to articulate the skills that they've gained from their experience. And I can say, if you're familiar with the Learning Reflection Agreement, we analyzed about 3,000 of those a few years ago, and I realized we never really disseminated that information, but the top skills that students identified that they were gaining from their MUCEP jobs were in line with the skills that employers are saying that they're looking for in the workplace. So there's a lot of synergy there, and we look forward to sharing that research further as well.
So, Aaron, I can definitely have a conversation with you about that, and we can, look at possibilities and talk about it, and look at what kind of options are available. Again, this would have to be done in conjunction with the MUCEP program and others, so that they're aware of it. But that's something that I think, these are the discussions that I'm hoping will take place. And one of the reasons we're sharing this information, I have to say, I think it was very impactful for many students. They shared, important aspects in those interviews. Some of the emails I received from students, which I didn't share here today, were very positive. So I think, yeah, these are discussions, and hopefully we can build from here. The Fusion Network is also working on new projects and opportunities for students. And hopefully, in the near future, we'll be able to share those and get those out so people are aware of them, and that we continue to build student skills. Just from my perspective, again, I take a quote, or I was having a discussion, and I remember this is from 20 years ago. I was an undergraduate student, and my uncle is a teacher. And I was saying, why do I was talking about my university experiences. Like, why do I have to learn this material? What does this have to do with my life? And he looked at me and he just said, you're not there to learn material. You're there to learn to think. And I think that was a really important piece. So this is where we need to go with education. We need to give students the skills and the opportunities to learn how to think, to analyze, to evaluate, and to make sound decisions. So I think that's something that we're focused on, and I'm happy to really be a part of that.